Welcome back to the vlog. Yes, it's time for another meetup game. This one will be held at Lucky Chances Casino on November 10th at 3 p.m. We'll be playing 3-3 no limit with a $500 max buy-in. Andrew Locke and myself will be the host of this meetup game. And we really are looking forward to playing with you, meeting everybody, and just having a good time. If you want to do an early sign up, you can just go to Andrew's page at Project Lock and sign up on the events page. It gives us an idea of the head count, and we can make proper arrangements for everyone to, buy into the 1-3 game for $500. First interesting hand, we have King Jack offsuit on the button. There were a few limpers, and I decided to try to punish them by raising the 20. If I take down the pot, I'm happy. If I get a caller, I'm happy. So we get a caller. We're going heads up to a flop in position, and we get a beautiful flop of ace, queen, 10. So we flop the nuts, but there is some danger with a possible flush draw. The player checks it over to us. We're going to go for about 1/3 pot and put out $15. It doesn't take too long before putting in the call. So we get to see a turn card with 77 in the pot of a 6 of clubs. Complete blank. He checks it over again. We decide to go for 30 this time. Trying to string him along. If he has an ace, maybe he'll just keep on calling us down. Giving him a decent price if he has a flush draw, but I'm wary of that. If a flush draw hits, then I have to make a decision. Most likely he has an ace and maybe some sort of redraw. After thinking for maybe 30-40 seconds, he puts in the call, and we get to go to the river card of a deuce of hearts, the brickest of bricks. He again checks it over to me, and now it's time to turn my hand into what might look like a bluff. If he has an ace, he's probably going to be calling me down with just about any sizing, so might as well make it big, make it look like I might have missed a flush draw. And it also puts the fear into him that when I do make a big bet, it's not always a bluff. I might be making a bet with the nuts. Anyway, he thinks it over, and I think he thinks I missed. And I think he's going to give me a loose call. And after a while, he just says, yeah, I call. And I show him the King Jack, and he quickly mucks his cards. So we're off to a good start with that last hand, and now we look down at 2 aces in the low jack. It is folded to me. I open for a raise of 15. Player on the button puts in the call, and so does one of the blinds. So we're going to end up going 3 ways to a flop with $46 in the pot. The flop comes out King 9-6 with 2 hearts. So we got an overpair. We don't have any backdoor draws or anything. Our opponent in the blind leads out quickly for $30. My read on him is that he's on some sort of draw. He might have a king with a flush draw, more likely just a flush draw, or possibly a straight draw with like a 7-8. So I put in the call, the other player folds, and then the turn card is probably the worst card in the deck. It's a 5 of hearts. It completes both the flush draw and the obvious straight draw. And now my opponent compiles a bet of $60. I was watching his mannerisms, and this looked so strong to me. I know I got an overpair. I know he could be making a play on me, and I'm exploitable, but yeah, exploit me when you have the best hand. I'm folding. So I mucked the aces. You just got to know when to get out of the way. He was kind enough to show that he did make the straight. During this session, there are a lot of hands like this one, where I have Queen Jack suited. There will be a couple limpers. I raised to 20. Most of the limpers will fold, but I usually catch one calling, and we'll go heads up to a flop with $47 in the pot. Flop comes down pretty good for our hand, but it is a very wet board of Jack 10-4 with 2 clubs. So we got top pair and a backdoor flush draw and some weird straight draws. Checked it over to me. I'm going to continue a little bit on the larger side just in case they have some sort of draw. I want them to pay a little extra for it. They think it over, they let it go, and we take down a small pot. But there are a lot of these during the session. Here's another example of some of the small pots that come along during the session. There were like 4 limpers, and I looked down at King Jack of clubs in the big blind. Definitely wanted to take control of this pot. Put in a raise to 20. Everyone folds except for 1 limper. So we're going to end up going heads up to a flop with $55 in the pot. Flop's going to come down ace, king, deuce. So we got second pair with a decent kicker. Definitely looks like it smashes our range as a pre-flop raiser. I lead for $20. Person thinks it over for a bit, and they just decide to let it go. All these little boring pots add up by the end of the day, and it can make you a winner. Of course, you can always win by having premium cards. There was a $6 straddle that I didn't even notice, so I opened for 15, which was a mistake on my part. And we end up getting 2 callers. So we're going to go 3 ways to a flop with $49 in the pot. And the flop comes ace, king, 4. So yeah, we got another one. We flopped second set, basically the virtual nuts. No one's going to have aces here. Checked over to me. I bet 15. End up getting 1 caller. So going heads up to a turn card of a 9 of hearts. It does put up a backdoor flush draw. If he has an ace of hearts with another heart, he might have some outs against me. I put in a bet for $35. I think he's just going to be strung along here. Kind of hoping for a card like a 4 of clubs. That way his kicker won't play if he has a weak kicker, and I can go for a bigger bet. He puts in the call, and we get to see a river card of a 6 of diamonds. Pretty good card, but I'm not sure how much of a bet he's being willing to pay off. I decided size for 75, about half pot. If he has an ace, he might call. It depends on his kicker, I guess. So after about 30 seconds, he finally puts in the call. I turn over my hand. The dealer announced kings, but I guess she should say 3 kings. Anyway, he mucks his hand. We take down this pot, and things are going fairly well so far. The game has been very passive, so I decided to do a lot of raising. I usually don't raise with pocket 3s under the gun, but in this case I did. And I ended up getting quite a bit of action. So we got 3 callers, so we're going to go 4 ways to a flop with $63 in the pot. Flop comes down 3, 9, 5. Oh, what a beautiful flop. Hoping that someone has a 9. Checked it over to me. I'm going to fire. I put out a bet for $20. Player to my direct left puts in the call, and so does one of the other players. So we're going to end up going 3 ways to a turn card with $123 in the pot. Looking for a very safe card so I can continue and get 3 streets of value out of this hand, but instead we are blessed with a 8 of clubs. 8 of clubs is a dangerous card, makes all those straights I was talking about earlier, plus it puts up a flush draw. When it's checked to me, I'm going to bet $85 here. A little bit on the larger size. I'm hoping that someone would have a hand like 9-8 or maybe a 9 with a flush draw and be willing to pay the extra money for it. I don't want to make it cheap for them. There are a lot of possible draws out there. They ended up folding, and I might have lost a little value here by going it this big, but I feel okay about that. I really didn't want to lose this set because I bet too small on the turn. So as I said, I was opening up my game, ended up raising 15 with ace-6 suited from the hijack. Only the big blind defends, who's a very competent player. Flop comes down, not very favorable. It does hit my range, but I don't feel good about this. So when he checks it over me, I just check it right back. I have a feeling he might be trapping with a bitter hand. And when the turn card comes as a 6 of diamonds and he leads out for 25, this is probably just a clear fold in my book. But I decided to put in a very loose call with a pair of 6s and was blessed by the river card being a 6 of spades. He checks it to me like he wants me to bet a missed flush draw. So I bet big, make it 85. And if I was him, I'll be snap calling me too. So that's what he does. He snap calls. I show him the 6 and he mumbles something about I shouldn't slow play my big hands. And he was frustrated with his play. There were several limpers, and I looked down at 2 queens from the small blind. I throw an additional $20 on my $1 blind, so I'll make it 21. And basically, the big blind and the limpers call. So we're going to end up going 4 ways to a flop with $84 in the pot. Looking for a favorable flop, and instead we get something that's hitting our opponent's range a lot harder than ours. It comes 10-8 deuce with 2 hearts. So this should really be in our caller's range. So I decided to check it over, see what kind of action pursued. It's checked over to the player on the button, who's an aggressive player, and he has a pretty good sized stack in front of him. So he bets out $35. That seems like a reasonable bet for me to continue. I put out my 35. There's a good chance I have him beat at this point. The other two players end up folding out, so we're going to go heads up to a turn card. And it's a 9 of clubs. Not the best card. It makes the board very coordinated. Hands like 10, 9, 9, 8, all those things get there. I do pick up a straight draw. I check it over to him again. This probably doesn't look like it hits me too hard, so he decides to continue, and he does for $75. I'm not going anywhere. I put in the call, and we get to see a river card of a 10 of spades. Wow, this board just gets uglier and uglier. I check it to him once again, and he decides on a bet of $175. Very juicy bet. And now I go into the tank for a moment. I'm thinking, would he really bet this big with a 10? Perhaps. He's an aggressive opponent. But the 10 hitting on the river actually makes it less likely that he has a 10 in his hand, and more likely he has something like an 8. Maybe he had 9-8 and got counterfeited. So I'm really only afraid of like a very few value hands, and there are a lot of hands that he now loses with, including all bluffs, all missed flush draws. So I think I got him. I toss in the chip, and he ends up saying nice hand as he rolls over ace-5. He was on a 3-barrel bluff, and so we caught him, and we take down this really nice pot to end our day. Thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate your support. Don't forget, our meetup game over at Lucky Chances Casino is on November 10th at 3 p.m. Sign up at projectlock.com for an early sign up. It'll be great to see everyone there, and thanks for watching.
Can I go to the meetup game with you and Andrew? I promise I'll be really good.
I'm going to take my wife instead, so you're going to have to stay home on this one, Zeus.